Okay, so this post was earlier this month, 6th of February, and Billy Joe Saunders said he really wanted the Chris Eubank Jr. rematch, expected to fight again despite retirement rumours. The problem is Eubank, more than likely, is maybe a stone heavier than when he was last in the ring against Liam Williams. And Billy, I don't know what he's weighing there, but he can't get down to 168, 160 no time soon. This isn't the first time Billy has blew up after fights. It's not the first time. And I don't know if he thinks he can replicate what his pal Tyson Fury is doing. But Tyson Fury is an anomaly. And pro boxers need to be told that. Alright? I don't know how Tyson Fury is managing to blow up between fights like he does and still manage to perform. I don't know how he does it. But even he would tell fighters, you can't do what I'm doing. Ricky Hatton will tell you, you can't do what Tyson Fury's doing. Or Ricky would say, you can't do what he was doing when he was champion, light welter and welterweight champion. Ricky used to blow up between fights. And Billy, let's say he goes on a crash diet. He certainly just can't walk into a Eubank fight. For one, he's got the eye socket that was damaged. And then going into a Eubank fight after a weight loss camp. Come on, man. He's not going to win that fight. He barely scraped a decision in their first fight. He's not going to win that fight. All Eubank is going to do is use that footwork that he displayed against Liam Williams. Billy's just going to be too slow, too out of shape, and he'll be basically in there for a payday. And if that's all he wants, then fair enough. We're a bit sick that way as boxing fans. We'll probably know that Billy can't perform, but we'll stick around to see Eubank give him a beating. Why not? Billy's not going to have no legs, so we're not going to see the prime David Lemieux footwork. He's going to be forced to come forward, Eubank to pick him off with a jab, and he's going to bust Billy up. He's going to bust him up. Billy needs rehab. Weight rehab, mental rehab, to get over the psychological scars that are going to be there with that eye socket injury. There could be many reasons why he's put the weight on. Maybe he's a little embarrassed by his performance after what he said about Danny Dubois quitting and then he quit, and everybody seemed to be having a dig after that happened. And, maybe he's just mentally not in a great place. He certainly ain't ready to fight Eubank. No way. Remember when he won the title against Andy Lee? And he had that gap between winning the title in his first defense, inactive, and he blew up in weight and he fought Akarvov, and he didn't win that fight. He looked terrible. The judges bailed Billy out that night. He looked terrible. He won't get away with it. Tyson Fury might get away with it, but he's not going to get away with it like Tyson does. Billy's 32 now. He's not 28, 27 blown up between fights. He's going to need at least 2 or 3 warm-up fights before he can even think about world level, in my opinion. So in terms of Amir getting that step-aside money, Eddie has took that off the table by telling Brook and Khan, yo, you go crack on. We're not going to pay Amir Khan step-aside money so Conor Ben can fight Brook. So Khan has activated the rematch clause. So if Kell Brook chooses to fight again and doesn't want to fight Amir Khan next, Khan can obviously hem him up in the judicial process. But Brook has said, yo, I'll give him another whooping. So it's called Khan's bluff, if you like. What does Amir do? Who really wants to see it, though? The PBC seem to be trying to come out of their shell a little. They've made an offer for Munguia to fight Jamal Charlo. Obviously, they've had Canelo fighting Caleb Plant over there. And they tried to make him an offer to fight Benavidez and Charlo, of which he turned down, and he's back on DAZN. I think the PBC's reluctance to do cross promotions, Floyd come out after the Tank Barrier said we're going to do it all in-house. I mean, what was that? When you look at all the fighters there, who has done a cross promotion, really? You can't really count Wilder, because Wilder's deal with Fury started before Bob Arum got in there. And when Fury drew with Wilder, the PBC were basically chasing the bag, if you like. They were committed, trying to get this W over Fury to leverage Wilder against the likes of AJ. They was committed. So I don't really class that as them, let's reach out to Bob Arum. The first fight was supposed to be a cherry pick for Wilder to get a ring-rusty, overweight Tyson Fury and catch him off guard, knock him out and build off that. And it went pear-shaped. And it was out of their control after that. Fury made them wait for the second fight. And we know what happened in the last 2 fights. Crawford and Spence. Haven't had that yet. We finally got Crawford and Porter, but Porter didn't have a strap at that time and he wasn't that active. they had nothing to lose by sending Porter out there, really. The likes of Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman, couldn't get them fights with Crawford. Andrade, he can't get a fight with Charlo. But they're going to offer Munguia a fight? This just seems ridiculous to me. Is it just chasing this Mexican Mayweather blueprint or something? I don't know what it is. To me, that sounds outdated. Maybe the PBC are underestimating how much they think Canelo needs them. He needed them last time because he wanted to achieve that undisputed goal at 168, and he did that. The first negotiation broke down. They said he was trying to take the whole of the Hennessy sponsorship. He wanted a big upside on the pay-per-view. If Caleb got injured, he wanted a replacement that would pay him the same as Caleb. Caleb came out like making him look like a diva, and he is a diva. And I don't think Canelo was happy with that. Hindsight being what it is, they would have probably gagged Caleb. Don't say anything, because they did renegotiate the fight and it did happen. You know, first interaction with Canelo, they really needed to treat him with kid gloves. And they didn't. I mean, if Eddie wasn't really like catering to Canelo, you could see, like he said, I'm openly a fanboy of Canelo. I want to work with him. He's the best fighter. He's easy to work with. He's great. He inspires me. He feeds his ego. And if that isn't being done, Canelo will walk. Now, don't take that up with me about Canelo's temperament or personality. Take that up with Canelo. That's what I'm seeing. I'm just reporting what I see, what I think is an accurate summarization of what's going on. But the PBC don't really have a figurehead to do that. And maybe they don't want to do that. I remember when it just started, the PBC, they were saying that the reporters were complaining because there wasn't refreshments and a sandwich and a drink for them. And that's what makes them write favourable reviews. A lot of them ain't into boxing. It's a paycheck. You know? That's the realities of boxing. The media want their little perks. You give them their little perks, they'll embellish for you a little. As for them getting that Munguia fight, it's not going to happen. I mean, Spence said that Oscar doesn't treat his fighters well when Oscar tried to sign him and Wilder. I don't think Spence was originally with Golden Boy. I know Wilder was. But when Oscar tried to re-sign him, he didn't get a very good response from Spence or the Spence fan club. Charlo said he wants to fight Oscar after he tried to make Charlo versus Canelo. Back then, Oscar was saying Charlo was ducking, but now he's not best buds with Canelo. He's saying that Canelo ducked the fight. Oscar's a mess. Oscar is a mess. So they're trying to open the borders a little, but it seems only to Mexican fighters. But they might find themselves getting counter offers to any offers they're making, saying, yo, yeah, you can send Charlo over here. We're not sending Munguia over there. So is this a new thing? PBC trying to make fights outside of their side of the street? Because they're not going to survive putting Ortiz, Charles Martin and Barrios Thurman pay-per-views out there. They're not going to survive. Spence Ugas, 3 belts on the line. It's probably not going to sell the amount of pay-per-view worth risking both of them as attractions, in Al Heyman's opinion anyway. They're running out of options there. They're really chancing their luck with Tank, putting him in there with Rowley on pay-per-view. If it was just regular subscription, fair enough, but you're chancing your arm now. That's 3 inadequate pay-per-views on the bounce. Inadequate. And right now, the way it's deadlocked, their options of getting cross-promotion fights on their platform are either from DAZN, Matchroom, Golden Boy, or ESPN, Bob Arum Top Rank. And look, them offers are going to have to be substantial if they're going to get them on their side of the street. The Mexicans ain't just going to feed Munguia to an Andrade or a Charlo to get beaten up. They're just not going to do it. They're not going to sacrifice him like that. Whether it's on DAZN or the PBC, it's just not going to happen like that. Jamal and Andrade are in their 30s and they're still trying to get signature fights. It's not like it's a Mayweather. They're just not going to let any black fight... sorry to interject race into it, but they're not just going to let a run-of-the-mill black fighter... not saying they're not good fighters, they're good fighters, but they're not going to let black fighters who are not franchise players just have their way with somebody they're grooming. They're just not going to allow it. The PBC are making an actual offer. They're coming out of their wheelhouse to try and get Munguia as a defense for Charlo. Although, you know, what's happening with the Johnny Beck fight? Was he going to fight Johnny Beck for the interim title? And wasn't there an eliminator for that WBC belt that Jamal has against Adames? What's happened to that? They're going to toss Adames a step-aside bone or something? But then again, it's the WBC. they kind of have rules, but they kind of bend them, change them, adapt them as they go along. It's saying here on DAZN that if Johnny Beck is denied his fight at an eliminator with Munguia, Chris Eubank Jr. could step in. That's if Chris isn't busy calling out Kell Brook. Better late than never, but Al should have been making these cross-promotion moves a while back now. The UK, yeah, the Conor and Brook card, well, the main event was good, Conor and Brook, but the card wasn't all that. And I have a feeling that with Channel 5 making a substantial bid to get in the game with Wasserman and Sky trying to up the anti-BT match from DAZN, we're going to need to see a lot of cross-promotion fights, or some of these cards are really going to be weak. Some weak cards. If you want to raise your fighter's profile, the best bet might be to put them on a substantial card with a rival, and hopefully they'll reciprocate. I don't know how they'll work it out, but there's a lot of bodies in there in the UK, a lot of bodies, all piling in to put on cards. And quantity is good, but quality is important as well. You know, we could start at area level to English, British level, Commonwealth, European. Either work out a deal or go to purse bids, but we can't have 4 break-off groups trying to do in-house fights in the UK. It's just going to ruin domestic boxing. It's just going to ruin it. Like Dan Aziz, he finally got himself a deal. He's 15-0, 10 knockouts. He won the Southern Area English title, British title. Last time out, he beat Hosea Burton, and he's got his deal with Boxer XX. He's a Sky fighter now. That takes some of the load off his shoulders in terms of worrying about a roof over his head, paying bills and training and fighting. He's got his deal. On the 26th of this month, he'll defend his British title. Opponent still to be announced. They were talking about a Lyndon Arthur fight in the not too distant future. Lyndon is a free agent. I don't think he's with Warren no more. And that'll be interesting. Lyndon will be looking to bounce back. Dan will be looking to push on. He does have a number 6 ranking with the WBA. And this is what I'm saying. Like, we will miss out big time in the light heavyweight division because the domestic clashes that can be made, Joshua Buatsi, Yard, Lyndon Arthur, Dan Aziz, Callum Johnson, Callum Smith, Buatsi I may have mentioned already, Craig Richards, Lyndon. I'd even throw Shakan Pitters in the mix. We really want to make sure, you know, that the networks are on top of their game and they don't, you know, like, oh, well, we're not letting our guy go over there and all this madness. It's just not going to work because British boxing thrives on domestic fights. It thrives on it. I don't think we've ever had a situation where we've had four networks looking to stage cards. I'm not talking about the small hall promoters, right? We've got 4 networks. Wasserman is going to be bigger than Mick Hennessy on Channel 5. They're going to be looking to put on title fights, British title fights, Commonwealth, European. Same with Sky, Boxer, Matchroom DAZN, BT and Queensbury. Then you've got the pro bellum element going on. But from the standpoint of television, if you go back historically, you have Harry Levine. He controlled it all for the most through the TV era, and Jack Solomons. They used to work together. That's 2. In the late 60s, 70s, and 80s, you had the Cartel. They just ran things. It was basically just them. Then Frank Warren came along, and Barry Hearn. Barry and Frank, they used to basically share the ITV platform until Sky came along. They had a couple of cards at the most on the BBC. The British Boxing Board controlled the BBC. The Cartel wouldn't let no one in. They wouldn't let nobody in. I think, what was it, out of how much 100 shows? I think Barry Hearn had 1 card on the BBC and Warren had 1 card. Out of how many hundreds? It was hundreds of shows. Barry and Frank were kind of sharing ITV. So that's 2 platforms of boxing, if you like. 2 platforms. These days, it's 1 promoter per network. You know what I mean? And now we got 4. So that could water down the gene pool if they try and do in-house fights. There should be enough for everybody to eat, in theory. So I found this on Twitter. It says DAZN pay-per-view U-turn pushes yearly subscribers to 219.97 cost. So basically they're saying you can either pay $19.99 per month or $99.99 for a year. But obviously Canelo is going to be, what is it, $80? Which would leave, is it $39 over from what they say? Are they saying if you pay $12.99 a month? That's what they say. If you pay $12.99 for 12 months of the year, then that would leave the remaining $39, I'm assuming. I don't do maths. But who would do that? Who would pay $12.99 a month rather than pay the whole subscription a year? I'm sure there's someone out there who's did it. But yeah, we're talking double the initial outlay there. There's a lot. I'm not going to mention the person's name, but there's Anthony Joshua, and this is his Twitter account. He's responding to the minions. Somebody said, I would like to see at Joe Joyce Boxing get the shot at Anthony Joshua, but I can't see AJ taking it as Joyce has the tools and heart to win it. AJ replies, rolls eyes, you really think I wouldn't fight Joe Joyce? Big up Rocky Ali, says definitely would. Has proven would fight anybody. Joshua replies and says, laughing out loud, okay, I've shared the ring with most people you see in the heavyweight division today. He boxed Otto Wallin twice as youngsters, and he boxed Joe and stopped him in one round. You see, the guy making the comment probably doesn't know that. And AJ said he'll do the same thing today. Ain't nothing changed. I want to big up David. Rocky Ali. David said, I don't know if someone has AJ's phone, but I'm enjoying seeing these tweets. And Rocky Ali said he wouldn't mind seeing AJ batter Wallin if Usyk fight cannot happen next. He went the distance with Fury, so why not? And why not? Another individual said, you got scared from Wilder though. Put his funny faces at the side of it. And AJ said, yes, I'm scared. AJ then pulled out the receipt and said, need I say more? Let's put this AJ Dutt saga to rest. He said, this is a Wilder tweet. When the fight was a draw, I told you that I would give you a rematch. You know I was offered more money to fight Joshua than I was getting to fight you. Again, being a man of my word, I fought you, like I said I would. AJ replied to another tweet which said, it would be lovely if you'd fight more than once a year and might actually help your career too. And AJ said, agreed. Winning a heavyweight championship in my 16th fight was a gift and a curse. It stopped my progression as an active fighter. And to bear that out, Mike Tyson had 27 fights before he challenged Trevor Berbick for the WBC belt. He had 27. AJ had 16. And I could go on showing you more examples where all-time greats have way more fights than what AJ had before he won the belt. But that was interesting. AJ just talking to random people on Twitter, answering their queries and questions. Now, AJ is a down-to-earth kid. I call him a kid because I'm a lot older than him. But too much diplomacy with the Wilder situation. He turned down the same amount of money that Canelo is taking from DAZN, 120 for a free fight deal, same amount of money, and he's never sold the amount of pay-per-views that Canelo was sold. He's never sold the amount of gates. He's not as commercially viable as Canelo, and he turned that money down. And there's AJ saying, I respect him as a fighter, but he just wasn't ready to fight me. Nah, he ducked you. Throw shade at the motherfucker. And this is what pisses people off about AJ. Too diplomatic in issues that do not require that amount of diplomacy. You were the A-side. You were the A-side all the time. Let the motherfuckers know. Vladimir Klitschko has said he believes Dmitry Bivol should not be allowed to fight Canelo Alvarez on May the 7th due to the invasion of Ukraine. Every Russian representative needs to be sanctioned. This way we show Russia that the world is against this senseless war. This is a quote from BBC. Now, most people on Twitter, they disagreed with Klitschko. And I guess I disagree as well. I don't believe Bivol even lives in Russia. He's not in a sports team like a big franchise football team or anything like that. He's a boxer who just getting his big break. But I understand where Klitschko's coming from. It's a bit bigger than boxing for Klitschko right now, so I understand where he's coming from. Every and anything he can use to undermine Russia and Putin, he'll take. So to him, yeah, let's sanction it.
let's sanction the fight. He's not in, I want to see the fight mode right now. He's in war mode, him, his brother, and a lot of other people over there. So I can see two sides to it.
You see, nobody should have to suffer because of war. Nobody should miss out on things because of war. I mean, for those who say that BIVOL should be able to fight, well, so should the likes of Usyk and Lomachenko, and they're top of their food chain. And they're in their primes right now. This is the best period possible for Usyk. I mean, he's the heavyweight champion, unified heavyweight champion. But how would he get his mind around fighting when his country is going up in a big fireball? He's a warrior. And he's having to make the choice, him and Lomachenko, should I continue boxing or prioritize saving my country? And they're choosing the latter, which most men would do. Well, I want BIVOL to box as well. It's bigger than boxing. Let's say BIVOL couldn't box for a couple of years, or maybe 3 or 4. At least he's got a country to go back to. He may not have cashed them Canelo checks yet, but he's made enough where he'd be comfortable out there. And at least he'd have a country to go back to, which isn't ridden with dilapidated, broke down buildings, children buried under piles of rubble and brick, all his friends gone, the people he grew up with all fucked up. I'd rather know that my country was safe and the people I grew up with in that country are safe and are still having a good quality life than box. Life is about choices and hard choices. And there's a saying that the children will pay for the sins of their father. There's always sacrifices, always things that have to be given up in the struggle, so to speak. 1956 was the year when Lazlo Papp won a 3rd Olympic gold medal, a record that will probably never be broken. This achievement came less than a month after thousands of his fellow Hungarians had died in a crazy, futile attempt to free themselves from the shackles of the Soviet machine. His first gold medal was won in London, 1948, then 1952 Helsinki, 1956 Australia, Melbourne, were followed by an unlikely professional career that did not begin until he was 31. Then in 7 years he was unbeaten in 29 fights, won the European middleweight title and defended it 6 times before at the age of 38 and on the brink of boxing Joey Giardello for the World Championship. Papp had his passport pulled by an increasingly uneasy Hungarian government. He died in 2003 after years of suffering from Parkinson's disease. Sports and politics are sometimes intertwined, and there's nothing we can do about that. They didn't have no professional boxing in Hungary, so didn't get his world title shot. He fought in Austria, France as a pro, Germany, all around Europe. But they took his passport and killed his career off. He was just trying to pursue his goals. He had over 300 odd contests as an amateur. He lost to maybe 12 of them. He won the London Olympics, outpointing Britain's Johnny Wright in the final. He was European champion at Oslo in 1949 and in Milan 2 years later. In the 1952 Olympics, and now down at the new light middleweight poundage, the first of his 5 victims was America's Ellsworth Spider Webb, who years later was unlucky not to beat Gene Fullmer in a WBA title fight. In 1956, the modest railway clerk from Budapest, who liked nothing better than to get away from the city to pursue his hobbies of fishing, completed his 8-year domination of the top amateur light middles and middles when he beat future light heavyweight champion, trained by Costamato, Jose Torres. That was at light middle. Only a month before the Hungarian people had demanded freedom from Moscow, had in their desperate enthusiasm attacked occupying tanks with nothing more than their Hungarian flags and their bare hands. 3,000 of them died in the first 3 days of the uprising, but for a week or so it seemed that they had been successful. The leader of the Hungarian dissidents, a Roman Catholic cardinal named Mitsenti, returned to Budapest and celebrated Mass. He said, "At least there is a freedom of speech in Hungary and everybody can express their opinion," he told the crowds. On November the 5th, 1956, the Red Army crushed the revolution in a single morning with a grotesque display of military force. 1,000 tanks rolled into the capital, backed up by air assaults, artillery, and infantry. The last words from Radio Budapest were, "Help, Hungary, help." A news reporter wired his story in between firing at Russians from his window. "What is the United Nations doing?" he asked. The grim answer to that was they were tabling a motion of protest. So now Lazlo Papp's victory in Melbourne is not a celebrated achievement as it should be, because thousands of people were risking their lives dying by crossing the mined border in the area into Austria. Some were blown to bits. The track athletes did not go to Melbourne. Papp made a different point though. No doubt he would have enjoyed it better if he had been drawn against the Soviet representative. Perhaps it's all well he was not. The water polo semi-final between Hungary and the USSR was an ugly spectacle. Surprisingly, Papp returned from Australia stating his intention to turn pro, and it appeared that the government wasn't going to stand in his way. Maybe they had other things on their mind. He held a press conference and said his age was not an issue. If a boxer lives a sportsman-like life and trains regular, he can be swifter, more durable and tougher even at 35 than a young person who does not think and live as a sportsman should. Naturally, I face a tremendous task. I realize the life of a professional fighter is a tough one. I shall have to learn to go 10 and 15 rounds. He worked with his trainer, Zygmunt Alder, on adapting and set to training 6 days a week, 3 of which he spent in the hills outside Budapest. His debut proved difficult to arrange, but eventually he had 3 fights in Germany in a 6-week spell in May and June 1957 before a promotional contract was terminated. He didn't box again for 16 months, then concentrated his career on Vienna and Paris while still living in Hungary. Progress was slow. He had a tendency to be cautious, as if worrying about the distance. There were 10-round draws with Germinal Ballerin in Paris in April 1959 and Giancarlo Garbelli in Milan in December 1960. However, in 1962, in Vienna, he outscored the veteran American Ralph Tiger Jones, who holds a win over Sugar Ray Robinson. 2 months later, he won the European title before a 17,000 crowd in Austria's capital, in Austria, stopping Denmark's Christian Christensen on cuts after 7. Papp was in control almost all the way and put Christian on the floor in the 7th. His first defence was against the British champion from Leicestershire, George Aldridge, in Vienna, February 1963. Aldridge fought with enormous courage to keep it close for 10 rounds, but took a standing 8 count in the 11. Only just survived the 14th and was floored and stopped with 13 seconds left in the 15th. For the first time, Papp's connections began talking world titles, and at the end of his career, almost 2 years later, they were still talking. Meanwhile, the 5'5.5" Hungarian stopped the outclassed Peter Muller in 4 in Dortmund for European defence number 2, floored and outpointed the popular Randy Sandy over 10, and travelled to Madrid to outclass Luis Forledo, a part-time bullfighter who talked up a great fight. Papp's one-sided 8-round win was witnessed by Real Madrid superstars Alfredo Di Stefano and Ferenc Puskás, who has been a legend since the Hungarians shattered the myth of English soccer supremacy at Wembley in 1953. Puskás congratulated Papp in the ring, and let me just ad-lib here. Did they show the world how to play football, the Hungarians? Oh my God. Di Stefano and Puskás, the skills. Mind-boggling skills. Wow. As the world title passed from Dick Tiger to Joey Giardello, talk continued of Papp getting the next shot and remained just talk. In a non-title 10-rounder in Vienna, he outpointed Harry Scott of Bootle, United Kingdom. Stopped old foe Christensen in 4 of a rematch with the European title at stake. And then in Vienna in October 1964, well past his 38th birthday, outpointed Coventry-based Irishman Mick Leahy over 15 rounds.
Mick Leahy, for those who don't know, his claim to fame was beating a near at the end of the road Sugar Ray Robinson in Britain. Papp had announced his world title plans, after which he said he would retire and coach the Hungarian Olympic boxing squad. The Hungarian government, however, were nervous about the project. They had grown accustomed to Papp as European champion, but for whatever reason decided the World Championship was not a good idea. Maybe they felt he would lose. Maybe they didn't want him to win. Who can guess how the minds of these anonymous bureaucrats worked? Whatever the reason, Papp's permit to travel was withdrawn and his career over. Information out of the Soviet bloc countries was not easy to decipher in the 60s and 70s, but Papp seems to have simply stayed in Budapest and lived fairly comfortably. By the 1980s, he was, as he had always planned, coaching the Hungarian national amateur team and was involved in a string of successes. There is unlikely to be another boxer like him in the amateur and professional career at world level that spanned 16 years. Virtually nobody beat him. He should never be forgotten. I mean, the politics are eerily similar to what's happening in Ukraine, the Lazlo Papp story. Amazing. Amazing how history repeats itself. What's the deal with people telling Bud what to do, who to fight, how much he can earn? Bob Arum, Eddie Hearn, Jamal Charlo, Errol Spence. Look, Bob Arum is literally telling Terence to do the Bojangles to sell himself more when it's your job to promote. Errol Spence telling him to go get a belt, straps even, and then we'll fight. That didn't happen. There's this guy Charlo telling him to fight Danny Garcia last year, and now he's telling him to fight Errol Spence, his brethren who doesn't want to fight him, telling him to take less money. These PBC fighters have got a fucking nerve, bruh. Seriously. Spence telling him to take 20%, 30%. His fan base telling him what percentage he should take. Terence needs to go his own way, right? He needs to go his own way and let the PBC do what they're doing, because you can see now they're trying to reach out further than this side of the street to make fights now. Terence should just keep taking good fights wherever he can get them. It might turn around where he doesn't have to chase the PBC and they need him more than he needs them. You know, Charlo acting like people wouldn't like to see Crawford versus himself. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Come on, man. I'll just say this. I think Spence is going to beat Ugas, but I need Ugas to win the fight because, okay, if he's going to do the same boy shit that the rest of the PBC fighters do when the name Bud is mentioned, fair enough. At least I've got a little hope if he beats Spence that things could change. He might well fight Crawford. He might well. He might have a little more heart. But there's no way Spence is going to fight Crawford while Spence is still relevant and got titles. There's no way he's going to take the fight. No way. You know, you get a challenge and then you tell the guy who's challenging you to fight someone else. I don't know. Maybe Terence better get a sombrero, a goatee beard, a poncho, and get Abe Sanchez to cheerlead for him screaming Mexican style. He might get the fight then. Instead of offering advice to Terence, maybe him and his brother need to take some advice from Terence. How do you stay out of these situations like this? They're talking about he may be arrested for some incident involving his brother too. I have a feeling that Lee would. I'm not calling you by your full name, but I think Lee would. No, I think Michael CONLAN is going to win the fight. Actually, I think his more fluid boxing is going to beat what I think is static style of the hard punching Lee Wood, trained by Ben Davison. But I have a feeling that Lee is going to prove better than what I'm crediting him for, and he's probably going to make my pick look really stupid now. The fight's gone a bit under the radar, but I'm actually looking forward to it. I don't think CONLAN has fulfilled his early potential yet. Some say regressed. But here's his big night. His big night to put it all together. It's also Leigh Wood's big night as well. Looking forward to that one. I think it's going to be a very good fight to watch, actually. Leo Santa Cruz has held that super champion position for a flipping long time without defending the damn thing. Now, either challenge the winner of Wood and CONLAN or let this fight be for the full title. I really don't get this. I think people are seeing the methodology now. Okay, we'll fight Formella and we can make an argument that Conor outpointed him better than Sean Porter did. Then we take on Vargas. Okay, he did it better than, or earlier than Spence, Danny Garcia and Porter, etc., etc. Then we go Granados. Well, Danny Garcia got him out of there, but in all truth, Granados was on his bike against BENN. So basically, they're picking fighters who are a little past their best, and then the likes of Eddie and Conor are telling us, oh, you see how I did it quicker than they did, but how relevant is that to the fights he should really be taking, like the Avanesian fight? Eddie and Conor trying to say, yeah, well, you did it quicker than the likes of Spence or Danny Garcia or whoever you did it quicker than. Does that mean you're ready to fight them guys? Because you've got common opponents who you've done quicker than they have? Because if that's the case, it's time to step up and call out some real challenges. If you're going to fight vets, there's some real veterans you can fight. Like a Danny Garcia. He's a veteran. Go take him on. So now Chris Van Heerden, I guess the goal will be to get him out there quicker than what Errol Spence did, or do a similar job in a similar time frame. And Conor and Eddie for the next 5 months will be all up in the camera. Look, we beat him quicker than Spence did. So this is April the 26th in Manchester. Van Heerden probably just going to turn up for a payday, to be honest. His real claim to fame is sparring Conor McGregor and making Conor look like the novice he was. But if this is the chosen method of promotion, well, as long as he produces and gets the knockout, the bandwagon continues. What can you say? I hear the Josh Taylor-Jack Catterall result is still in some controversy with the police getting involved. I'm not interested no more. Josh has 30 days to get a deal done with Alberto Puello, who's his mandatory, ordered by the WBA. If Taylor takes this fight, then all that talk about the weight affected his performance is bullshit. Like, okay, I know he's got a mandatory. Why isn't he doing more to get the rematch against Jack Catterall if he can still make the weight safely? But I'm expecting him to drop the belts and go through with his mandatory, or he'll have a lot of explaining to do. I know nothing about Puello, nothing at all. Most of his fights have been in Santo Domingo. That doesn't mean he can't fight, that I can't really grade the level of opposition, but the names on the resume, I can't vouch for anything. That's all I can say right now. What kind of article is that? Abe Sanchez wants Golovkin to be aggressive again. He's trying to be something he's not. I didn't realize Abe was still training him. He's not actually training him, is he? Yeah, you telling us what you want Golovkin to be and you don't train him no more? I'm going to actually start a poll on Twitter. And I might do one on the community page as well. Who would we like to see Anthony Joshua take on? Joe Joyce or Otto Wallin in the absence of Alexander Usyk? It looks like Ricky Hatton is almost pleading for Tyson Fury to go back to the more herky-jerky hip-it and hop-it tactics rather than pile on a whole load of weight and stand right in front of Dillian in a toe-to-toe battle. But it looks like Ricky is questioning how many times Fury will be able to take getting clocked hard by Dillian, especially if Dillian can get to the body. Make no mistake, this is one of the best body punches that Fury has faced, one of the hardest punches, and one of the best equipped opponents that Fury has faced in his career. Don't be surprised if there's not an upset here. Don't be surprised. Both men can be decked. Fury's jab will be an important weapon for him, but if he hasn't got his footwork, Dillian could time him if he's not using his feet as well as just his arm reach to keep distance. He could time him with that left hook. I don't think it's going to be a fight where there's lots and lots of clean punches. I see a lot of mauling. A grueling brawl. Dirty fight, perhaps. Eddie Hearn said Tyson Fury hasn't got the power to hurt Dillian, and that in the 11th they're going to go toe-to-toe and Dillian's going to catch him. I don't know about Tyson not having the power to hurt Dillian. He certainly does. Eddie doing some cheerleading then, obviously. That was on Twitter. But with that, people, have a good weekend.